So initially this video was supposed to be about Tekken. I'm an avid, lifelong fan of the series, and I pretty much at one point in time owned every main console release of Tekken, and this is the only fighting game series I can say that with confidence, even though I still suck at it. However, after talking to one of my friends, and as I started writing the script for that video, I started to realize to even talk about Tekken, I was talking more and more about the history of 3D fighting games. I was surprised to see that there wasn't even a video online that gives loves to the games in the third dimension. So let's take a deep dive into who were the pioneers of 3D fighting games, what makes them so different, and ultimately why outside of a very few select games it has almost been a dying genre. For reference, people who do not know, when I refer to 3D fighting games, I don't mean games with 3D models rendered on the 2D axis like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or Marvel vs. Capcom. I'm speaking of games that you could fully use the 3D realm to fight in, such as sidestepping. So basically, if you can see characters do moves like these, then it's a 3D fighting game. With that out the way, welcome to the world of fighting games, now in 3D. People always debate on where the beginning of competitive fighting games started. Some say it started with Yi R Kung Fu, made by Konami in 1985, being the first game to use a variety of unique martial arts based characters, fighting styles, and stages. Others say it was Capcom with the original Street Fighter. Alright, I'll stop kidding around. So what I was trying to say is, others say Capcom started a competitive fighting game scene as we know it today with Street Fighter 2, and it's hard to say otherwise. Street Fighter 2 was a massive hit, changing the gaming landscape as we know it. It has millions of fans, and I would love to go into the impact of Street Fighter another time, but I'm sure that video has been made by multiple people and can wait. No, let's specifically talk about the beginning of 3D fighting games. In 1993, Sega was on top of the world. Imagine this, they were dominating the home sales market, passing the absolute juggernaut Nintendo with the release of the Genesis or Mega Drives. During the same time, arcades were having a renaissance with the release of Street Fighter 2, and Sega decided to capitalize on all of this. Games like Afterburner, Outrun, and Space Harrier were massive hits. With games like the revolutionary Mortal Kombat and SNK staples like Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting hitting shelves a year prior, Sega needed a way to stand out in front of tough competition in the fighting game department, so initially Sega wasn't even interested in making a fighting game. Yu Suzuki, the creator of Sega's biggest arcade hits, was in charge of the Amusement Machine Research and Development Department 2, or better known as AM2. During this time, Suzuki began experimenting with 3D technology using polygons. His first successful venture in the 3D space would be Virtua Racing in 1992, initially thought as a proof of concept for the newly created Model 1 arcade. Virtua Racing became a massive success, with Electronic Gaming Monthly calling it a racing masterpiece and receiving multiple awards, and in 2015 IGN calling it the third most influential racing game of all time, only behind Gran Turismo and Pole Position. After Virtua Racing, Suzuki was looking for his next 3D success. In an interview he said, "Virtua Racing was a 3D game, and looking ahead to my next 3D project, I really want to do a game that required simultaneous multiple joint movements. The hardware we had at the time wasn't powerful enough for what I originally had in mind, but after finding I could simulate basic human movement with 30 to 32 joints, we created Virtua Racing's pit crew as a test subject. To be perfectly honest, I really wanted to do a soccer or a rugby game next, but being team sports, there were just too many characters to animate, and we simply didn't have the computer power to make it work. It eventually boiled down to the question of what could we do with only 2 characters on screen, which left us with boxing or martial arts." Virtua Fighter burst onto the arcades in 1993 and it was an instant hit. But I mean, can you blame people? You walk into the arcade, you see something like this, one of the 600 titles made to capitalize on Street Fighter and Street Fighter. Something like this would definitely catch everyone's attention. Virtua Fighter became one of the highest grossing arcade games in Japan, and interestingly enough, almost had a 1-to-1 ratio with Saturn hardware, with its near perfect arcade port, it being a launch title bundled with some American Saturns as well. The technology in Virtua Fighter was so revolutionary that in 1998, it was recognized by the Smithsonian Institute in the fields of arts and entertainment, and arcade cabinets became a permanent exhibit at the Smithsonian Museum of American History. Now, with all the credibility and high praise, you would think it would still be on top and king of all 3D fighters. You would think that Sega would have been bright enough to retain all their staff on Virtua Fighter for games to come. I mean, it just wouldn't make sense that one company would take key staff from Virtua Fighter and not only make the best-selling 3D fighting game, but the best-selling traditional fighting game series of all time, period. I'm sorry, you'd have thought wrong. It is almost an understatement to say that Tekken was a massive hit that changed gaming forever. In the future, I plan on releasing a full video on why Tekken is special and a market leader in 3D fighting games. But just for a reference on the scope and magnitude of this game, here are some stats to show you how well it did. With how big Tekken, Virtua Fighter, and its sequel Virtua Fighter 2 became, is what I consider the birth of the golden age of 3D fighters from 1994 to about 2000. This was the birth of the majority of 3D fighting games. Some people like to think that Soul Edge was the first game of its time to do 3D weapons-based combat. However, you would be wrong. In 1994, a year before Soul Edge, Battle Arena Toshinden, developed by Tamsoft and published by SCEA, hit the arcades, PlayStation, Saturn, PC, and Game Boy. Well, let's just stick to the home console versions. Battle Arena Toshinden has a wide variety of characters and weapons and decent movement options. I'll be honest, doing the research for this video, I only thought this game was an old anime, but after playing this a bit, it's honestly a really good game and only improves with the sequels. Give it a try if you're unfamiliar and looking for something new. The year after the first Tekken releases in 1995, Namco throws its hat again into the fighting game market with the release of Soul Edge as an experiment on a weapons-based fighter. Soul Edge is also the first game to use motion capture by creating passive optical system markers. Okay. So that means the little ball thingies are covered with a reflective material that can reflect the light source, and the camera captures this, and we got motion capture. Or I think. Say something in the comments if I'm wrong. Now, what we were talking about? Oh yeah. So Soul Edge was the first game to use passive motion capture. Even to this day, I'm surprised by the fluidity in the movements of the Soul Calibur games and how well a weapons-based combat fighter works in 3D, something that till this day is being experimented in. Outside of Soul Edge, no new 3D fighting game franchises were made in 1995 unless we count Fighting Vipers released by Sega, a Virtua Fighter game with more Tekken-like elements, which is highly ironic and probably the reason we don't hear about this game. There was a sequel of this game made for the Dreamcast, but it was never released outside of Japan and Europe. Wow, Europe actually got something that North America didn't. That's super surprising. However, in 1996, we will see an explosion of 3D fighters and multiple 2.5D fighters, fighting games that have 3D graphics but do not have 3D movement. I'll try to make this short, but let's get through these games quickly. In 1996, we had Toe Ball released in arcades that year, a game created by the former Tekken 1 and 2 director Seishi Ishii. If I butchered his name, let me know in the comments. If people remember Toe Ball, it's probably with the PlayStation port because it came with a demo of a small little title called Final Fantasy VII. Fun fact, the designs and the artwork of this game were made by Akira Toriyama, the Dragon Ball creator. It's crazy how active this guy was in the video game industry, like he had his hand in some of the greatest games of all time. The main appeal of this game was its quest mode, which you see later emulated in the Tekken series. Also, is that Mokujin? Though this doesn't count as a 3D fighter in my opinion, that being 3D with 3D movement, the Street Fighter EX series was released in 1996, developed by Akira and published by Capcom. It's crazy, while Street Fighter 2 and the Alpha series are still going strong, Capcom was still influenced by the 3D fighting game craze. While it looks pretty lackluster even for the time and the games and the sequels had problems, I will never get over that EX soundtrack. It's always a gem to my ear and probably was the main thing I was listening to as I write this script. And I probably used some of their songs for this video, so you're welcome. Now I'm forgetting any 3D fighting games in 1996. Nope, I think I got them all. Well, other notable things that happened in 1996 was the N64 release, DVDs officially launched, I was born that year, Spice Girls Wannabe was taking over the airways, and the first 3D puberty stimulator came to arcades. Alright, I'll stop messing around. Dead or Alive was developed by Team Ninja and Tecmo, in fact the dying Tecmo at the time. So to say this game helped keep Tecmo alive today isn't as far-fetched as you think. So you can go to bed knowing that virtual jiggling titties kept a whole multi-million-dollar company alive. You're welcome, Dynasty Warriors fans. Or depending on your view of them today, sorry Dynasty Warriors fans. But besides the obvious Dead or Alive, did have a great idea up its sleeve. What's the main reason people don't play Virtua Fighter? Everyone who has played Virtua Fighter knows the reason is because it's hard. So just make the combat more simplistic, have the game look beautiful, and add something that will catch our players' eye. In a world of barren 3D fighting games, it's still alive today, which is a testament to how well the formula worked. Well done. I won't go in depth on every 3D fighter. A couple of these games I plan doing videos on, but some other big 3D fighting games that were made around this time was Bloody Roar, Rival Schools. I mean, I swear to God, Capcom, like, why did you let this die, but you let garbage like Street Fighter X Tekken exist? Like, you thought it was a good idea with those gens? Like, I hate you. I literally hate you. Like, where's Season 4? The Dimps Dragon Ball games. You can consider these fighting games or not, but this series is still the third best selling traditional fighting game series of all time behind Tekken. And even traditional 2D fighting games were transferring to 3D, like King of Fighters and Mortal Kombat. It seemed like everyone had a 3D fighting game, and there were many to be played, but the real question is, what happened? Why could there exist 10 different full 3D fighting games, and now today, we only have Tekken, Soul Calibur, and Dead or Alive? What happened to 3D fighting games? The answer isn't as simple as you think. Starting in the early 2000s, fighting games in general were at an all-time decline, with disappointing sales of industry leaders like Capcom, SNK, Namco, and Midway. The death of arcades coupled with lackluster releases almost killed the fighting game genre, and 3D fighters were the first to go. Also, becoming competent at any 3D fighting game outside of something like Bloody Roar, it takes a tremendous time investment. On average, compared to 2D fighters' 20 or 30 move command list, 3D games support an easy 100 move command list at a minimum. Another big problem with 3D fighters is most use 3D as a fad and not a staple. These companies will apply 2D mechanics to a 3D environment, and the results were not of the top quality. When Street Fighter 4 released back in 2008 with its 2.5D art style, it was a massive hit, Seeing this, companies went back to their 2D roots, and 3D fighting games were left abandoned. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this video. It's been a pleasure doing this, and hopefully I've convinced some of you guys to at least pick up some fighting games, try them out. It's really a passion of mine playing them. But yeah, I'd like to thank everybody. Also, I have a Twitch channel called Mama's Brown Couch. We are streaming 5 days a week for 3 to 4 hours, Monday through Friday. So stop by if you want to see me play some fighting games. And yeah, I put a lot of work into this video, so feedback will be appreciated. And also, all my sources are in the description below. Thank you and have a nice day.